today's keynote speaker. Not many broadcasters can say they're on the air for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, but that is exactly what Fox and Friends Brian Kilmeade has been doing since 2006. After joining Fox News in 1997, Brian was soon named co-host of Fox and Friends, where he still works alongside Steve Doocy and Ainsley Earhardt. Together, the three have powered their way to the top spot in morning cable news by providing viewers with the latest on breaking news, sports, politics, and entertainment. During his tenure at Fox News, Brian has developed the ability to interview and provide insight into a variety of individuals, including newsmakers, politicians, celebrities, and athletes. He also hosts his own nationally syndicated radio show, The Brian Kilmeade Show, on Fox News Talk. Brian has written 4 books, 3 of which were New York Times bestsellers: The Games Do Count, It's How You Play the Game, and more recently, George Washington's Secret 6, and Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, co-written with Don Yeager. His 5th book, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, is on sale in the lobby thanks to the Forum Club's partnership with the Palm Beach Bookstore. And we invite you all to join us for a book signing immediately following today's speech. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Kilmeade.
Wow, what a good-looking crowd. I did not know you were all going to dress up for me on a Friday afternoon. Very impressive. This is a huge event for me. Thanks so much for having me here. And please adopt me. I'd like to move. What a great area. This is unbelievable. And no one even litters. I haven't even seen a piece of debris blow around. So, the one thing I know when I look in the audience, I know you have different interests, I know you have different focuses, but there's one thing that's pretty clear to the groups I speak to and to the people that are interested in my books and watch our show. We bleed red, white, and blue. Very patriotic audience. We know our country's not perfect, but we know we're the closest there is to a perfect country. Tony, thanks for that introduction. Great job. Tony Peruzzi, and thanks to the Forum Club for having me here. So, you have a chance at Fox News. Every once in a while, you sit in your seat and you look like almost everybody here can look back and say there's moments when you had a break and you thought, well, that's when my career really took off, and you think how lucky you are. And that happened with me really in 1996 when MSNBC, Fox News, Fox Sports, a whole bunch of networks launched at the same time. And I got told about Fox News needing a sports guy. And I said, well, I'm doing sports at All Sports Network. Wouldn't it be great to do sports where everyone's doing news? But I really had a passion for news. And little by little, because of the events of the world, things had a chance to, from the election mess in 2000, thanks Florida, to 9/11, on the air at the time. Little by little, I'm all news all the time, and I couldn't be happier because the volume and velocity of the news that's coming down right now, no one can keep up with. It's unbelievable. I can't tell you, if I get off a flight and I choose not to get the go-go Wi-Fi, by the time I land, the whole world has changed, and Germany has switched leaders. So, and that's all thanks to the President of the United States, who lives very close to here, President Donald J. Trump. So he was one of our favorite all-time guests for about 6 years. Every Monday and then sometimes Tuesday he would call in and he would say, all right, what are the topics? And we give him 4 topics. He goes, I'm ready to go. You need any background? Nope. And he's ready to go. Thick opinions. Then he would call back and go, all right, when am I getting my ratings? How are my ratings from my block? Is it true they're the highest ratings on your show all week? And you know what? They were. They would spike. And he goes, what if I came at 8? Let's see if it works. We would try him at 8 o'clock. He would spike then, would start at 7 o'clock, whatever it took. Then he'd be watching, sometimes calling early. But next thing you know, our favorite guest, who we would take out to lunch for every Christmas because he wouldn't go to our Christmas parties. Turns out he was busy and he had his own tower. So we actually took him out for lunch for 3 straight years, and we would talk. And the thing I noticed about him is that he would ask more questions of us than we had for him. I noticed that people said hello to him weren't rich and weren't successful. The people that liked seeing him the most were the waiters, the waitresses, the people that he lit up with. When he walked out of the tower, the everyday people that he spoke to, those are the people he liked. And it wasn't an act. I'm saying to myself, it's kind of interesting to grow up with wealth, to own these things that he owns, to be in that status that he is. I hear rich people don't like him. It's the everyday people that like him. And guess what? There's more of them. And I think he cares more about them than he does of the rich people. So my hunch is when he started running, I thought there would be something there. I had no idea, because 2.5 years ago, I started pursuing and going over the background of Andrew Jackson. That's when President Trump was a talk show host. Excuse me, not a talk show host, a reality host with a lot of opinions. I had no idea he was going to run for president, and upon further review, how similar Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump are. Number one, we have a special coming on at 8 o'clock on Sunday on our channel, Andrew Jackson, Hero Under Fire. We compare him to President Trump. And in President Trump, it's uncanny. I took a tour behind the glass at the Hermitage where Andrew Jackson called home. And I go, what are those stacks of binders? He goes, Andrew Jackson had 16 subscriptions to newspapers every month. He would outline them and put comments on them to reporters that got the story wrong. And he would write comments, not true, never happened, find him. They're this high. When these reporters came to interview him, he'd hit them with, did you talk to? This guy started his own in the White House. He didn't name it the White House, it was Washington News. Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump similar to the press. Game on, right? Get it right or I'm going to jump down your throat. And it wasn't until days like this when I don't work the morning show and I didn't do my radio show, when I flip around channels and I get to see what drives them nuts. Of course, you have opinions and you have hosts, and there are times when you have this person who feels this way. That's fine. But when every single block in every single news service, in every single thing is anti-President Trump, even when the economic numbers are extraordinarily good, the move to Jerusalem was something that, at the very least, you'd have to say, took unbelievable guts. He fulfilled the campaign promise. It's not like it's a surprise. It's not like we decided to recognize Belgium. This is what he ran on. So he did it, and people are shocked. They don't bring up the fact that Senator Schumer, Senator Cardin, Nancy Pelosi said, I agree. Anyway, so it's not what you report, it's what you decide to report. So I'm not saying it's proportionate emphasis that I think just go out to under president. I don't see anything quite like it. If you flip around, it drives. That's what I recommend. If you see him, is don't flip. So I filled with school to pick up history. When I was I thought sports was fun until you do it for a living. Then you get sick of it. Every time you watch a game, they have to report on it. They get hurt. You go to one is going to be the story. So it became work. So I used to use an escape. I used to talk about everything. Pick up biography, something on Andrew Jackson, Alexander Hamilton. What I like to do. Fans to see American history come for me. I don't tell many people it's not the most exciting thing to say. I started writing his books, and I said, Bill, these books are unbelievable, but I don't know who's going to buy them. I don't know how interested people are in history. Man, if you could tell Americans about their past in a true, accurate way and keep it moving, people care, and they bought it, and they did. So I said, Bill, for 20 years I've been studying George Washington's Aspiring. It's right by your house. Did you know about it? He goes, no. I go, until 1930 was top secret. Without this spy ring, we don't win the war. And guess who thought that? George Washington. But guess what the spy ring wanted? They didn't want their names out. They wanted their identity secret. So Washington did it. He kept it secret, but he also kept their letters. And it was Morton Pennypacker who was able to piece this together and put it together by 1930. And we were able to find in the New York Times a little excerpt that said, local historian makes major find. The spy ring that saved the American Revolution has been unmasked. And since that time, we find out about dead drops, invisible inks, encryption, writing between the lines, things that the CIA told me, because we had a chance to go to the historians, that they were able to figure out in the middle of a war that these agents don't go on a single mission without knowing about. They learn about George Washington's spy ring as spies in the CIA. That's how special these guys are. Who are these people? So-called average, everyday Americans who do extraordinary things for a cause, who don't want a pat on the back. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I described today's average, everyday American. A farmer, a grocery store owner, a bartender, a longshoreman, a socialite who seems to be a mother of two, Agent 355, and a guy who ran a printing press, who we thought was a British loyalist, who wrote a loyalist paper, but would interview British officers, but would give the intelligence to George Washington. Genius. We recreated it, we did it, and I was just happy to do it. When I watched National Treasure on television, I couldn't understand Nicolas Cage. You guys, I don't understand anything he says. But the other thing is, I have a better story, and it actually happened. So that's why we came out with George Washington's Secret Six. And I thought, if it sells 2 copies, it doesn't matter. I want the Woodhulls and the Townsend families who are still around to understand what their relatives and what their ancestors know, what they know on Long Island in this certain section I want the country to know. So it sold about 1 million copies. It's even out in those mass market copies. You know what it shows? The so-called American people not only care about their history, they relish it, they rejoice in it. I'm not going to the Harvard professor. They write for each other, right? I can't get into that school. They don't even want me on that campus. But if we do something that's quick moving, accurate, to the point, that tells the people about who you are, it helps glue us together. You don't talk about Democrats and Republicans in here. So that was it. I think we produced it, did a really good, I was very proud of what we did, so I was done. I always learned when I did stand-up, if you hit a joke and you got 4 left, if you really feel like that hit, get off the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, good night, everybody. Tip your waitresses. So they said, listen, you should really go back. There's a thirst for American history. So I wanted to find something else to have a passion about, and that is the War on Terror. And every time you get a deep columnist who wants to put this in perspective, they go, well, Jefferson dealt with this. Adams dealt with this. Look how they dealt with it. I go, what are they talking about? So then I found out that Thomas Jefferson had Islamic extremists to deal with in Northern Africa who were taking our ships because we had no navy, taking our guys, and they were pulling them off, taking them hostage, enslaving them, taking our ships, and holding for ransom. We're a new country buried in debt. We can't afford to pay ransom. So what do? We let them stew. They were in prison for years, for generations. So we had a Secretary of State. We had no president yet, but we sent our 2 favorite guys, Ambassador Jefferson and Ambassador Adams, into England to meet with an ambassador from Tripoli. He said, what do you want? He's like, well, why do you take our guys? We don't have a problem with you. You have problems with Britain, Spain. That's not us. We're a brand new country. He goes, no, basically, if you're not Muslim, you're an enemy. Unless you're going to convert, you're open season. Adams heard this, was horrified. He said, let's pay the money. Jefferson says, we have to punish the first slight, or we'll pay for that forever. Both have great points. Adams wins the initial argument because we have no navy. Washington hears both arguments when he becomes president, and he says, I have an idea. Let's split the baby. I'll build you a navy, and I'm going to pay the money right now. We have to get our guys out. Our American people are horrified about the prospect of our people being kept hostage. So he did it. Adams has a navy. Adams doesn't want to use it. And I can't blame him to a certain degree. North Africa freaked him out. He says they're beyond reason. We cannot talk to them. Not the Muslim people, but the Muslim leaders. They treat their people hellaciously. They look at the West as their enemy. And to tell you the truth, we needed that region because we had to sell to get out of debt. So Adams says they're not our problem. When Jefferson takes over and goes, they're our problem. I'm not paying the money. They're going to declare war on us. They did. And guess what happened? We sent them over. And in the beginning, we tried to blockade. It didn't work. Then we adjust. We rotate out admirals and captains. And next thing you know, we get it right. And we start punishing them. And then this guy named William Eaton says, we're not going to do any good unless we get a land war together. So this American, who learned 5 languages and also learned many Indian dialects, decides to be dropped off with a handful of Marines in Egypt to put together the deposed leader and an army of mercenaries and march 500 miles through the desert to take on these Muslim powers. Ladies and gentlemen, there were European countries and armies that refused to do this. We have Americans doing it without a map. Sure, we had drones. So they march, and there's insurrections and there's stories, and William Eaton takes Derna. And he's on the cusp of Tripoli when we prematurely cut a deal. Later, Madison had to go back and finish him off. Bottom line is, we told them, we freed our guys, got them out, didn't pay any more money, sent a message to the Muslim world, if you mess with America, we will fight you. And up until 1980, when we were bombing Tripoli and Gaddafi, we didn't have any problems. Because even though we want a world in which we can intellectualize our way out of it, it's a world in which only respects strength. Jefferson, the ultimate intellect, who wouldn't put together a militia during the Revolutionary War, said, we have to fight. And that's what we learned from Jefferson. And that's why Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, the Tripoli pirates, I wanted to say the Tripoli terrorists, they didn't want me to. They're not really pirates. They used Islam as a method to attack and enslave. And that's the story that maybe you don't hear enough about America. And I blamed Jefferson because his resume was too good. When you have the Louisiana Purchase, the third president, write the Declaration of Independence, the first vice president, secretary of state, and you become an ambassador to many nations and the greatest intellect of his time, no one says, hey, what did you do against the terrorist? No one focused on it. But now we're focused on it. And if you want a template for a future leader, you crack this book, go to the Jefferson Library like we did, and find out. This was an unexplored area of his life, but it's a problem America's still dealing with today. People bought the book. Not because I'm cute, because I am. But they bought the book because they care about the country. If you can tell a story about the country that they're not getting in school, that they don't remember from their class, because they didn't major in it, because they're in business or theater or whatever, they care. And that, to me, fuels patriotism. So now, I have a chance to move up in the chronology. And I thought, what's next? The War of 1812. And I had a chance to go to the White House. Anybody here been in the White House? Do you ever see the burn marks in the archway? That's because the British, and by the way, I'm still mad. They burned the White House to the ground, and we left the burn marks on the archways to remind us how fragile our country is. We had a 5'4" sickly leader looking out from a mountaintop on a Washington burning to the ground. We have a 40,000-man militia force, no unified army, a small but potent navy, taking on the world's superpower. We're losing every single battle. Our capital's been burned. Our president was almost killed. With a great intellect and very little leadership skills. When people think that the world's going to come to an end because President Obama's president or President Trump's president, my goodness, you don't know the long story of America. We were always on our back. We always get up bigger, stronger, and faster. And when we were vulnerable, we were still willing to fight. But man, we were in over our heads. Jackson, the whole time, kept putting his hand up. I got my guys here. I kind of have revenge on my mind. They killed both my brothers. My mom died during the war. They imprisoned me. They tortured me. My dad died before I was born. I'm kind of thinking revenge. Don't worry about it. You're a backwoodsman in Tennessee, what we call now flyover country. The elite are in Virginia, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, and New York. That's where we'll find our officers. When you lose every single battle, you rotate you out your Secretary of War. If you're James Monroe, you look south. Who is this guy? This 13-year-old orphan that was a congressman, a senator, an attorney general, a self-made lawyer, an unbelievable businessman, a militia general, and the future two-term president of the United States. This is American success story without the social programs. A 13-year-old that says, I can't believe how lucky I am to be in America, who bleeds red, white, and blue like everybody in this room. So Sunday there's a special on Andrew Jackson, Hero Under Fire, because for some reason it turns out he wasn't perfect, so we have to rip him apart and take down a statue. I'm being sarcastic. It better not happen. So I want to give you a 3-minute look at this book that President Trump tweeted yesterday. He's going to like the special. This is The Battle of New Orleans. So here's the 3-minute version of the book and what went into it and what you can expect Sunday night.
The War of 1812, America's second war of independence, was going terribly for the United States.
We were so weak, we've got just the worst generals, we got no plan.
The British, the world's premier economic and military power, thirsted for a second shot at destroying America after losing the Revolutionary War 23 years earlier. The most perilous and bleak time for the United States? The invasion and burning of Washington, including the White House.
But here at the Hermitage, Major General Andrew Jackson was seething. And his country was losing this war badly. America needed a leader.
Without a standing army, for President Madison, America's utter future hung in the balance. He found his leader in Jackson. His greatest challenge? Stopping the British forces from taking New Orleans.
If you lost New Orleans, and if the British controlled the great city, you lose the entire Mississippi River, and you lose all of our western frontier that we acquired through the purchase, so we wouldn't have been able to do westward expansion.
The plan? Build a wall, dig a canal, fill it with water, and wait for a British charge. This berm, this protection, this wall was built in a matter of weeks, miles long, to protect Andrew Jackson and the American troops. Over there were thousands of British troops. What they wanted, that was New Orleans. What's at stake? The future of the country.
His mishmash of troops that comes in, part Choctaw Indians, Kentucky and Tennessee militia, Beals rifles, and free men of color. They're not going to go out and engage the British. Jackson knows that would be suicidal.
Any expert would tell you Jackson's ragtag army would need a miracle to stop the British from spending Christmas on Bourbon Street, and Jackson knew just where to go to ask for it. Why would I be outside a convent when I'm trying to tell the Battle of New Orleans? Because this isn't just any convent. This is the home of the Ursuline nuns. It dates back hundreds of years. Prayed for Jackson's success. And among the people who think that these nuns brought him a miraculous victory, Major General Andrew Jackson himself.
It's the miracle. It's praying for a miracle, the Catholic Church and the Battle of New Orleans. I mean, that is where we know that there was divine intervention.
And that divine intervention would reveal itself in the final fight, January 8th, 1815.
This becomes a bloodbath here. The corpses, well, now we're just looking at green grass. It was the beginning of the end of Britain, and in many ways the birth of modern America.
Jackson's forceful leadership would help record one of the most decisive and stunning upset victories in military history. When Andrew Jackson left his estate before the War of 1812, he was known locally. When he was done winning the Battle of New Orleans, he became a national star, maybe the most famous person in America. But more importantly, his win sent a message to the rest of the world that we would fight relentlessly and furiously for freedom. As for Jackson, he would ride that fame to 2 terms in the White House and go down as one of the most consequential and influential Americans in our history.
That's a quick look at Andrew Jackson. It's still there. So you think about it. I got 3 weeks to put together an army to stop another army that just beat Napoleon. Good luck. So he said, no problem. I got 1,400 guys. I need 5,000. I'll find them. With a uniquely American army, with Choctaw Indians, free men of color, that's what America's about. We do our best when we bind our diversity together to fight for one cause. I think maybe we need to fight for one cause. I mean, they think maybe we have to get behind that cause. And to go back in history, I think, could help do that. So who is Andrew Jackson? I thought his quote that he brought around from his mom tells a lot. Some parents in the audience might understand. This is what his mom told him. I guess he was pretty tough. Make friends by being honest, keep them by being steadfast, never tell a lie, nor take what is not your own, nor sue for slander, settle the cases yourself. So he decided to shoot a lot of people. He's had a bunch of duels, bullet in his lung, never took a backward step, a second for anybody, take on his enemies politically, physically, and every other way, inspire a country that needed to be inspired and bled red, white, and blue. What I thought was also interesting is people that say, the War of 1812, well, yeah, that was terrible. It was a draw. We're lucky to get away with it. The Battle of New Orleans didn't matter. The Treaty of Ghent was signed. Technically, you're right. But upon further review, which we did in our research, it turns out the British had every intention of holding on to it. They said that they hoped that in the end they could go to what's akin now to the Hague or the International Court to prove that Jefferson had no right to get the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon, who basically they claim bought it and flipped it to us. So we doubled the size of the country and they want it back. If you looked at the British then, they tend to hold things and not give them up. Hence Hong Kong, the India forever. We would not be the same country. And here's what Jackson said for critics that told him, hey, Andrew, you really didn't have to fight the war. Congratulations on the win. Quote, if General Pakenham, that's the enemy who fought with Wellington's troops, called Wellington's Invincibles, if they were, put it this way, I guess Andrew Jackson was with the New York Giants, New England Patriots that year? I guess the Giants, what are them? Get it? If General Pakenham had his 10,000 matchless veterans, they could have annihilated my little army. If they could have done that, he would have captured New Orleans, sentryed all the contiguous territory. Through technicality, the war was over. Great Britain would have immediately abrogated the Treaty of Ghent and would have ignored Jefferson's transaction with Napoleon. He came back with that victory. Not only did he send a message to the rest of the world, he also saved the country, because this thing called the Mississippi was there, and the mouth of the Mississippi. You control the mouth, you control the river. So they knew that if you control that, we're never going to grow past there. And the British feared us. Why? Because we had this thing called freedom, this thing called democracy. It's not great if you're in the king and queen business, because king and queens don't usually run effective campaigns. So they didn't like the magnet that was being set up over here. They saw this as the one chance to chop us down. And for those of you who said, so what, a big war, they weren't going to stay anyway. Lastly, the northern states had a Hartford Convention. They got together and said, you know what, I didn't vote for this war. We're doing terribly. I kind of like the British. I'd like to go back. They show up in Virginia to meet with Madison when word comes out that the Battle of New Orleans was won and Jackson takes it. Madison opened up the door and basically said, what do you guys want? They said, no problem. I got to go. That's what's magical about this, and that's what stands out. And I think that all of you, for the most part, I believe, are very patriotic and don't have to be reminded how great this country is. But I thought I could close this part, and we're going to take some questions shortly, with this. Here's what he said at the close of his presidency. I thank God that my life has been spent in the land of liberty, that he has given me a heart to love my country with the affection of a son to the country, and a father to the people. So Jackson, Jefferson, and Washington have one thing in common. So-called common men who did extraordinary things because they believe in this other cause called the United States of America. Don't let anyone tell you you're not an exceptional nation. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we hit the lotto when we were born here, and it's up to us to win the Super Bowl every day. That's the standard we hold us to. Don't worry about the arguing. Don't worry about the friction. It's only because we want to be better. And I think it's all part of the process and built into the rules. So thanks so much for having me here. And I could take some of your questions now. I guess some of you wrote some of them down.
If anybody has questions, please hold them up. Our volunteers will grab them. Brian, our first two questions come from our students. And if the student from the Weiss School will please stand and introduce yourself, we'd like to begin the Q&A.
Hello, I'm Adya Shah, an 8th grader at the Weiss School and the vice president of the Weiss debate team. And I would like to ask you that as a member of the media, how do you discern fake news from authentic journalism?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. I don't love the term fake news. You know, fake news is the Weekly World Report when they said, spacemen are stealing your luggage and replacing it with exact replicas. You know, that's fake. Brian Ross did something seemingly totally irresponsible. You know what I'm talking about? Last week came out and said Donald Trump did this and did that, and he got suspended for a month. I'd say that's fake news. That's irresponsible reporting. I think this is what you should look for. The way you stack a show. Do you lead with the number one story is, or do you lead with what your agenda is? So the number one story today, or number two, should be the economy. These numbers are amazing. No one can mess with these numbers. So here's an example. So I'm watching another channel today in my mirror, which I've never done before. Anyone watch TV in your mirror? Very strange. That's why I only usually talk to spirits. So I'm watching TV in my mirror. They put me up at the Breakers, by the way. I still haven't seen the whole place in my apartment. That place is huge. My chopper dropped me off right in my living room. So as I say, they said, yeah, the economy's numbers, the unemployment's going down, it's continuing to grow, and it's surprising experts. But for how long? For how long? Fine. Maybe in 10 years it might plateau. Can we worry about tomorrow? You know. So I just think you should look, instead of fake news, it's too easy. Look at people's emphasis on news. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
If the second student from Nova Southeastern University is interested, ask your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Sabrina Hutchinson. I'm a respiratory student from Nova Southeastern University. I'm joined today with my colleagues from the respiratory program as well as from public administration. My question is, how do you think the proposed tax bill affects students looking forward to education in the graduate program?
Well, I like to see what's actually going to come out because it's so different. They're both 465 pages. So I keep gearing back and forth. But one thing they did have a problem with President Obama unilaterally said, those student loans, I'm not sure I want you to pay them back. And by the way, the government's in control and that's going to compound the debt. I think that there might be trouble with that policy after this tax return, which is not going to please a lot of people that are going to $55,000 schools, taking out 3 separate loans for separate years. I get that. But I don't think the solution is necessarily telling kids you don't have to pay anything back. How many people paid off student loans? How many people complained about it? You just knew you had it. Right? We don't love making our payments, but that's the payment you had. And guess what? When I was 26, I couldn't make the payments anymore. So I called the bank. They put the deferment for a year, came back with twice the payment, but it worked out. Have a communication with the bank. I don't think that's going to affect it. What I would love to do, I would love to somehow get together with the aid with schools and the tuition with schools, because as we jack up the national aid, jacking up their tuition, and so the state schools, so they're laughing at us, and they're killing our budget. But I actually don't think you're going to love this plan necessarily as a student. So sadly, if you have student loans.
All right, so, Newt Gingrich said the best way to communicate with President Trump is through the Fox News programs, Fox and Friends, and Hannity. So what goes through your mind when you hear comments like that?
I should book Newt more. Yeah, listen, we're in a different time. I mean, if you watch the alternative to get the president's attention, you have talk show hosts saying the president's mentally deranged. The other one interviewing nonstop anti-Trumpers or Republicans or anti-Trumpers, and they pretend as if they're fair and balanced. So I think what he's saying is the president knows those two things. He's best friends with John, and he watches morning news. Number 2 is if he had a choice, he chooses us, and I think it's a wise choice.
So the country is grappling with sexual harassment issues in the workplace. The private sector seems to have a handle on it in terms of acting very swiftly. How do you feel that the government officials are handling the situation?
We'll put it this way. They're making it up as they go along. It's a disaster. I read Axios today, which is a newsletter that goes out that has usually pretty good information. They expect another 40 congressmen to be caught up in this. What do we have, 3 last night? 3 last night. Trent Frank's one I don't even understand. He asked a woman if she'd be a surrogate. She was insulted, so he's quitting. So, Al Franken, I'm leaving, but I didn't do anything wrong. Conyers, I don't like wearing pants. So, I'm not sure that the excuses aren't the best. So I don't know where we're going, but I have a problem with the premise. I don't think the private sector's got it right. I mean, there's a lot of people that are feeling empowered right. My big thing is, the Al Franken's got 7 accusers in a short period of time when he thought he had 0. And then he came out and saying, I didn't do anything wrong. They misinterpreted whatever he did, and the president, why is the president regardless of the issue? I think we are in a seismic shift. In Hollywood, can't wait to see their award shows, right? They usually come out and talk about how much better they are than us. Good luck with that. Go ahead, and live your speech. Go ahead. We're waiting. So Hollywood, media, politics, we're all caught up in it. But I don't think the private sector's alleviated from it. I think that, women would speak best for their situation. But I don't think it's just in the public and entertainment sector.
Do you think consumers differentiate between the news organization and the editorial organization?
Do I think the public?
The public.
I think so. I think I got to give them some credit for that. You know, I do notice sometimes my mom will say, "Did you hear what happened?" And it's to be something crazy. And I'll say, I go, "Where'd you read it?" She goes, "I read it in the news." I go, "Where'd you read it in the news?" "On Facebook." I go, "Mom, who posted it on Facebook?" "Somebody I follow." I'm like, "That's not news." So please don't tell her I said that. But that's I always have to tell her. And every time she comes up with something, "Did you hear this? Did you hear that?" I go, "Where'd you read it?" She goes, "Oh, I forgot to check." So I do think for the average, I think you can tell. I mean, if you're watching Rachel Maddow, or do you think you're watching Tom Brokaw in 1975? No, that's clearly opinion. You know, if I'm watching Bill Hemmer, I don't think I'm watching Sean Hannity. I give the audience more credit than that.
So what's the biggest change that you've seen in the business since you started in 1997?
Oh my God. There's more passion. There's a much bigger audience. It is almost like sports in that it is so polarized. If you say something about it, like for example, I disagree with the president on the NFL. I disagree with him on Megyn Kelly. I disagree with him on, Allison, what else I disagree with him on? Oh yeah, I don't think George, I don't think that George Bush knew about 9/11 ahead of time, and I said it. You would think I slit every Republican's tires, right? If you go against what people, maybe the predominant of your audience, they don't seem to call balls and strikes like they did when I first started. But I have to be, I have to feel good about what I say. And I can't say that, I know where the president's coming from, but I can't say he didn't make the NFL situation worse. I don't blame Roger Goodell for everything. He's got a union to deal with. So when I say those things, that used to be one or two people go, "Yeah, that was, I disagree with you." Now, if you go to my social media feed when I say those things, it is, I'm the worst person on the planet, plus the really worst person on the planet. So I noticed we're really polarized in our own jerseys right now. For example, Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity are in a death war, right? Tough ratings war. They don't share a single audience member. So it's just a matter of their audience turning out every night. They're not swapping audiences. You're either in or you're out. So I just find that never would have been the case 10 years ago. I don't think, I think we started off, Brian Williams was battling Bill O'Reilly. That was a knockout, by the way. So that's how it started on other networks. Now I think it's really red and blue.
How do you feel about the deep state? With people talking a lot about the deep state going after the president.
I love the fact that we got some great investigative reporters that are keeping people honest at organizations that are usually taken at their word. I love the FBI. I just went to a picnic with the everyday agents out there in the street. They open up making $55,000 a year. They don't make a ton of money. They get very little credit. I have unbelievable respect for them. But I'm not convinced there wasn't a political agenda at the top. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have touched that. Now that we have some great investigative reporters, they're not getting away with that. If that's the deep state, I just think we're doing better at unveiling and honesty. From the sexual assault stuff, we're getting better. Be honest, and we're going to make you honest. And then when it comes to things that we normally took as gospel, sorry, Father, I can say that, right? As gospel, now all of a sudden, this isn't a direct quote from the gospel, but now all of a sudden we have to really evaluate things and be a little skeptical. I don't really see a problem with that. But I do see something. The one thing that I'm a lot more optimistic on now than I was a year ago, I might answer this different. When Donald Trump first took the job, most Republicans were like, "I hope he leaves soon." And now he's kind of winning them over. We had Bob Corker on the radio yesterday. They had a great conversation last weekend. Little Marco is now a valuable asset. Rand Paul is a golfing partner. Remember, you don't belong on the stage, Rand Paul? Lion Ted was felt out to be a possible Supreme Court justice. So, these guys are kind of getting won over by President Trump. And if they didn't, I would say, put them in the deep state. These guys just don't want to get their cage rattled. But the president goes in there, he throws punches, and he gets over it. And now I'm seeing other people getting over it. Save Jeff Flake.
There's a number of questions that are asking about what's your daily routine like? Because you're starting your day quite early.
Okay, my daily routine is I'm up at 2:20. They're kind enough to send a car in the morning. That's when I get most of my work done. I will shower, but the door's closed. All right? All right? And then I'll go in the car, and it's just like a blitz. And Allison, who's my great radio producer, does a lot of stuff on television too. We got these reports, the highlights from the night, the highlights in the news, all these different insider reports. We're putting it together into one show. At the same time, television saying what they're working on. And we have guests that we got last night. So we got the TV and radio to put together roughly at the same time, and we try to be different. So my busiest time is from 3 in the morning until noon. And then if I'm lucky enough to be on the 5 to fill in for Tucker to do Outnumbered, if I'm doing you do that. If you're doing a feature, like I have a chance to go to the border on Wednesday, you do that. So what I've wiped out in my life is hobbies. So when people talk about golf, you know, I golfed, the last time I golfed was with President Bush for the Patriots golf fund, and I was asked to leave the course. It's terrible. And then, you know, so that's what I do. So I go 5 days a week, and I'll fill in once in a while. And then when I get home, I have a great schedule for a parent because especially when they were younger, I could be at school picking them up. It's really not a far reach because then I hop on a train on the way home. Any Long Islanders, past Long Islanders here? You ever hop on the road after 2 o'clock? It's called the parking lot. So I go to Long Island Railroad, and I go home. My car's sitting there because I leave it there in the morning. And then it's back to the other half of my life, which is fix my Great Pyrenees dog's knees. Yeah, they're better now, though. They're good. They're brothers. And they eat stuff as well, so I'll repair that and try to cover for them before my wife gets home. So then do that, pick kids up, they go to school, then it becomes very normal. So the thing that I noticed is when Fox became more popular and polarized, people have a lot more opinions. You do a book tour, this is totally different. I haven't been home since Wednesday. And remarkably, my family's doing well without me. You know, once in a while, like, wish you were here. Don't get any of that anymore. When are you coming back? Why? Just asking. That's nice, I think. So I'm fine, I guess, if they're listening. So when the book tour comes out, I'll blitz it, but then things go back to normal in between. The one thing I've had an opportunity because of the change and the new management, I'm getting the opportunity to fill in at night, and it's been a lot of fun. To me, that's not work. My job isn't really work. I'd be doing this whether I was getting paid or not. I'd be the worst accountant in the world or the worst restaurant manager there is because I'd be watching television, the news the whole time. So I know I'm lucky. I know I got extremely lucky. I don't want to take it for granted. I'm watching these careers blow up in front of me. Don't worry, I'm not in danger that way. But I don't want it to end, especially with television shifting to the iPhone. You know, if you talk to 22-year-olds, that table in the back, how many are sitting watching the news? Fewer and fewer. So you're getting it, but you're getting it at your own way, at your own time, and I got to be part of that. So I'm just trying to do the best I can while I can.
You've done a tremendous amount of live TV. Is there a that stands out that you could share with us? Is there a particular interview or something that you did, or maybe it went off the rails?
Wow. There's a lot I'd like to take back. And it's good. Google it, and it'll pop right up. I mean, we were on the air, on a serious note, we were on the air in 9/11. We were on the air when the tanks first rolled it into Iraq. We were actually talking to the lieutenant as he was going forward. You know, we've talked to the space station. I've talked to Schwarzenegger. He, on camera, when the first time he told me that if I had a problem with chest hair, to pour gasoline on it and light a match. I kind of stand things out. Almost got into this fight with Jesse Ventura. That's interesting. I officially broke up with Jeannie Garofalo in 1998 because she's a celebrity and thought she knew everything. I know I'm going to kick myself and forget this, but I've also covered probably 9 Bowls. But the last Super Bowl was in the end zone at the final completion. By the end of that, to be there, it was unbelievable. By the way, you can see me in the picture. Tom Brady is at least a foot taller than me. Right. So it's been unbelievable to be the guy that stormed. We interviewed the president live, President Trump live. My the greatest moment and the most nerve-wracking moment, I was with President Bush. He sat out of office one year. They invited me to the Patriot golf tournament, and they said, you only need to tee off once on camera. The only problem is, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh, I don't golf. So I start meeting with the best, I have a month to get ready, and I start meeting with the best professionals ever. Greg Norman offered to fly up and help me. But I was afraid it would jeopardize our relationship, so I rejected him. So after intense training, I walked, and that right down the middle made me look like I got off. And then, thankfully, we were able to get in our cars to go away. But to sit there and be kind of friendly with President Bush, I think he respects me. Another great moment was, not on camera, only after, is President Bush asked me to play-by-play with Tim Carver on his last T-ball game. So, of course, I would rather have done the Fox World Series or T-ball with 5-year-olds on the White House lawn. So that was unbelievable. So I've had so many great opportunities, it's hard to knock them down. But I've screwed up a lot. And that's, again, you don't Google it, but if you Google it, you're going to go, now I know I didn't mention that.
Our last question. What is the kindest thing anybody has done for you in your career?
Wow. There's a lot of kind things. That's a tough one. I wish I went to the pre-interview. I remember Steve Doocy did something extremely well, extremely nice. He actually lives around here, and feel free, the door's always open if you're hungry. So I remember I'm doing sports in the morning before it was Fox and Friends, it was Fox Express. So what happened is, if you have to go to the restroom, I don't trust the audio guy, so I take the mic off. So I take the mic off. 4 times you're doing sports and you're leaving. 4 times doing sports and leaving. So guess what happens? I'm on live television, being evaluated by the second floor with all this management, and I come back, they go, here's Brian with sports. No microphone. So just before they pull away, and who knows if I would have got the job offer, I was still freelance at that time, Steve walks up with his microphone, puts it on, and he goes, the only way for me to do weather here is to make sure the sports guy goes quicker. And he covered for me. It ends up being very funny, and that was an extremely kind thing that he did.
Thank you.
But in terms of kindness, you know who headlines kindness in broadcasting? Sean Hannity. He does more great things for more people than you will ever find out. And as successful as he is, and he's enormously successful, he deserves every ounce of it. And all he wants to do is help other people experience his success. So if you ever see him, he's just a sensational guy.
All right, with the Q&A complete, we'd like to thank you, Brian, for coming here today. And if everybody would like to join us in the lobby for the book signing, and we'll see everybody next month for Rod Rosenstein.
Thanks so much for having me, everybody. I appreciate it.